In June, I passed my board, so I'm a certified physical therapist, and I decided to go a route I didn't think I would. I thought I would have went sports medicine, but I'm actually working with the geriatric population right now. So what I do as a therapist is I evaluate patients. They come in, something happened, broken leg, stroke, and then I evaluate them, determine a plan of care to get them back to doing things they love. So I'm basically coaching them. It's everything relates back to sports. Everything that you guys are doing now, you're going to be able to apply it to everything you do. But I have 65 to about 100-year-old patients. I have 12 to 15 right now, and basically I'm working at getting them back to home and doing the things that they love.
So for those of you who don't know, epidemiology is kind of like the study of risk factors for disease on the population level. So what I do day to day is a lot of data analysis. I'm a data scientist rather than a lab scientist. I don't ever work in a lab. And basically I do a lot of statistics, and the aim of our research is to kind of quantify the relationship between certain exposures and disease in the population. So my dissertation work is on risk factors for early menopause. Women who have early menopause before the age of 45 are at increased risk for cognitive decline and cardiovascular disease and all of these adverse health outcomes. So the goal of my work is to kind of identify the risk factors for that. So far we're seeing that vitamin D is really important for preventing early menopause. So most of what I do is research, but I also teach. I'm an instructor in the public health department as well, and I'm a research assistant, so I spend most of my time doing research and teaching.
What do you teach?
Reproductive epidemiology.
Is that an undergraduate course?
It's a graduate class,
Oh.
but you can take it if you're a senior. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Can everyone hear the panelists? I know that blower is very usually loud, but can you all hear them okay? Okay, Alex?
I work for a company called Direct Energy Solar. I'm a project manager. So what we do is we install residential and commercial solar arrays. So in fact, some of your folks might have it depending upon where you're from. It's, right now it's very big across the nation in select states. Massachusetts happens to be one of them. Actually, my company is based out of Texas, so we're scattered a little bit across the country, but mainly we focus on, as I said, residential. So what I do as a project manager is I show up and have to assess the condition of the home structurally and electrically, and kind of determine what needs to be fixed or what needs to be upgraded in order for us to install or even make an install feasible. And then once that happens, I handle all the permitting applications, dealing with the towns, the inspectors, and then the interconnection, which is basically dealing with the utility company that previously handled the power going to that house. And then any problems that the homeowner has from there on forward. And right now I have about 15 jobs going on. And actually most of my jobs are out here in Western Mass. I was in Pittsfield today. So I kind of travel a lot, but that's one of the more exciting parts of my job, because I'm pretty ADD. I don't really like sitting behind a desk all the time, but then again, it's nice to be able to get back and kind of get in the warm air a little bit. So
That actually leads me into my next question. Maybe you could just continue with that.
Sure.
What are some of the things you like the most? And I think we all agree that all jobs have challenges or things that you like, you don't like as well as others. So could you talk a little bit about pros and cons?
Definitely, probably the biggest pro for me. And actually, this is definitely going to lead into another question you're going to ask after. But when I was in your guys' shoes, I did not know what I wanted to do. And a friend of mine who I played lacrosse with here actually got me into the building construction tech degree. And then he called me after I graduated and said, "Hey, do you want a job?" And it was installing solar panels. I was like, "Yeah, I'm game. Let's do it." And I kind of climbed the ladder from there. And 3 years later, I was project managing. I've been doing that for about a year. And the things I like most about it, I don't really consider myself a hippie, but I really enjoy the aspect of kind of just greening up this world we have, and just kind of making green energy a little bit more, making it happen, I guess. And also, again, I really like kind of the variability of what I do. I'm inside. It's a lot of creative problem solving, and then it's also I'm out in the field. I'm meeting with people. I'm seeing really cool things, going really cool places. Yeah, variability, I guess, is my favorite part.
And the con would be the weather, I'm guessing? Since you mentioned being...
The con, weather is a con, but to be honest, as I said, I enjoy meeting different people. I don't know if I said that, but customer service is probably the biggest con, because for every great person I meet, there is unfortunately 2 very difficult people that I have to meet who aren't always as friendly, aren't always as easy to work with, and as I said, creative problem solving. So keeps me on my toes.
And so I know some of these questions you might have to twist into sort of your studies.
Yeah.
I'm sure you work with a team of people.
Yes.
Or students and teachers.
Yeah, exactly. I work with some master's students, and also I work with like a bunch of the faculty members in my department, and we kind of work collaboratively, which I really enjoy. I think it's a lot of independent work, but it's also we're all working kind of towards like a common goal, which I think really translates well from especially like individual sports like track and cross country, and like having to do like really individual roles on your team, but also working towards a common goal. So that I enjoy a lot. And just the research aspect is my favorite part. I love public health, and I love trying to design studies that like hopefully will impact medical recommendations and improve the lives of others down the road. I think is really fulfilling to me. My least favorite part is probably, at this point I'm in my last semester of coursework before I take my comprehensive exams. So I'm really done with taking classes at this point, and I'm really looking forward to having that off my plate. So I'd have to say that I'm ready to not be in the classroom anymore in the student respect. So yeah.
The time's well worth it.
Yes.
So for mine is, my job is awesome because I'm just working with people. I'm on my feet. I'm constantly applying the knowledge that I learned in school. Also, all those hard-working years of studying, you're now applying to what you know and helping someone by what you see. So it's a very on-your-feet, decision-making, quick, and everything. Again, it works back to sports. And the other thing, kind of like what Alex said here, is with the team environment, the reason why I'm in the setting I'm at, this geriatric setting, is that I'm working with occupational therapists, nurses, doctors, and we're collaborating. Like, I have my specific care that I'm working with my patient, but I'm also constantly in talk with other people to make sure we're providing the best care and we're not missing aspects that are needed. So I just love how on the ball I have to be all the time thinking about changing my plan of care if things aren't going well. Negative is anyone that is thinking about healthcare is the documentation. The way that we're moving towards now with insurances is that you've got to cover your butt with defensive documentation. You got to try to reimburse everything you're doing. So a lot of the times where you want to be one-on-one with a patient, you have to have a computer sitting right there typing away exactly what you're doing just in case, or to reimburse stuff. So that's kind of the negative side of my job, but everything else is every day, every second what I'm doing is helping someone. So I really like that about what I'm doing.
So here's what everyone wants to know. Does your major have anything to do, does your job have anything to do with your major? And maybe Alex, you could tell us if you started out in that major, or if you kind of had different
You gotta
paths.
specify Alex's, by the way. Sorry.
So like I said, I started out in the nutrition department for my bachelor's, and I think during the course of my bachelor's, I got involved in like some faculty research that kind of broadened my horizons about what it meant to do scientific research. So before I really started in the epidemiology track, I had always thought that to do like research relating to science would be in a lab, and I absolutely hated every lab that I ever took here. I hate chem, I hate bio, I hated all of it. So to me, I always kind of counted it out, and I thought I would either be a dietitian, or I was pre-med and I wanted to be a doctor. And then I kind of started looking at population research and like data analytics and getting a better understanding of how we can use like statistics, and everything that I do is like on the computer. So I guess I think nutrition was a good starting point for me, because what I do now is nutritional epidemiology. So I use everything that I learned in my bachelor's and kind of apply it forward to the way that I do my research now, which I really enjoy.
For me, it's a little more broad. BCT definitely touched on a lot of things I deal with, but they touched on it. They didn't go in depth about framing. They do a little bit, but it's not quite as comprehensive as the guys that went to like a Votech school who I've met who are like, oh, you don't know how to do this? I'm like, no, but I'm willing to learn. And that actually brings me to my next point. I met one of our civil engineers like my first day that I ever worked in the industry. And the guy told me, he's like, yeah, school's great, but you use about 5% of what you learn, and then you learn the rest of the 95% in the field. And I've found that to be extremely true. There's a lot of stuff that BCT prepped me for, but it was like just scratching the surface. Made me familiar with it, and then the rest of it I kind of was able to dive in and figure out as I went.
For me, I took a couple years off in between my undergrad and my grad studies. But what I really found that, because I don't think I told you guys, but I'm a bio and neuroscience major when I was here. And it kind of built me a foundation. So all of my chems, organic chemistry, calc, all of those gen ed courses you take as science majors, that allowed me to open the door to even apply to grad school. And that's something that I'll get into later, is that if you guys are considering looking into grad school, is start looking to see, because you'll find some prereqs on some of the even to get in, that you'll be like, I didn't need that in my major, but it will just be helpful, especially your senior year. Instead of, not saying I don't want to be a nerd, but don't slack off, maybe take a couple, if you're on scholarship, take a couple of courses that are going to connect you with your next step, if that's what you're thinking. But the big thing was it provided that foundation to open the doors for the next step.
And Alex, didn't you say something to me a couple weeks ago about being interested in engineering?
Yeah, actually.
Where do you see that going?
So I actually recently started going back to school myself. So I like project management, but unfortunately, I don't see it as the last thing I want to do in my life. And for me, I was thinking about that next step for me is going to be civil engineering. So I'm going back. I started taking classes actually here, which has proven to be extremely challenging because I live in Medway, Massachusetts, which if any of you are Mass folks, it's like an hour and 45 minutes from here. So I commute 2 days a week, and it is miserable. But if it was easy, everyone would do it. So.
Is anyone an engineering major here? You'll have to compare notes. Are you civil?
Nice. Mechanical is the other thing. The solar, and actually just a lot of green building in general, like a lot of wind technology stuff, geothermal. Every job description you look at says at least a BS in mechanical engineering or civil or something in that field. So I don't know if this is at all what you're interested in, but cool.
I actually have a side question for you too. How hard was it to get your first job after you? I mean, I know you did like assistant coaching, but like your first like non-athletic related job, like was it hard or?
Meaning like my job now?
Yeah.
It really honestly wasn't. I got connected through my final clinical internship.
Okay.
So I performed well there, so they took me somewhere else. So it was pretty easy, to be honest.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually agree. I got networked a little bit. The guy, as I said, I played lacrosse with, a good friend of mine, called me up and literally said, do you want a job? I went in to interview, and it turns out the guy who I interviewed with, who was my boss for 3 years, was his old roommate who I'd seen like 100 times. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that until I walked into the room. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't even facing me at the time. He picked up my resume, and I'd worked at the pub, so the pub was still on my resume. And he was like, oh, you worked at the pub? And I was like, yeah, I did. And he kind of like scoffed. And I was like, sorry, man. And then he turned around. I was like, oh, it's you. But after that, I met with one of his bosses. I kind of thought the interview went really poorly. And I was like, shoot, I wish I was a little bit more prepared for this. But then I got hired anyway, so I'm going to go along and say no.
That's not exactly the lesson I was hoping for.
I know, it was actually
kind of backfired on me.
I will say that one of the motivating factors in me going straight to grad school when I was still here was that I knew that the job market was going to be really tough. And I don't know how many of you have like tried as science majors to apply for internships, but I had the worst luck trying to apply for like science internships. Any type of research internships are so competitive, and there's so few of them that I felt like if that was how hard it was to even get an internship, I couldn't have imagined how difficult it would have been to get a job in what I wanted to do. So for me, the next logical step and the safest and smartest choice was to go to grad school. And I was fortunate that I knew what I wanted to study in grad school. So I think if you have a good idea of what you want to study in grad school, it's not it can be a good option to avoid having to work a job that totally doesn't pertain to what you want to do, you know.
But I also heard two things that you guys said, is that one, you used the internship experience to get to a job, and you used networking with people that you know.
Yep.
So it wasn't like the old times where you just like send an application to somebody. So you definitely need to start making your connections now.
Yeah, networking is huge. I can't tell you enough, because I've met a ton of people. I don't even have a LinkedIn, which isn't really a good thing at this point, but I've met so many people that I've got job opportunities now. If I want to walk out of my job tomorrow, I could, and it wouldn't really impact me that much, because I have people that are willing to vouch for me and say, come work here, come do this. So make sure you make a good impression wherever
it's
you
with
go.
everything you do, like
Yeah.
anywhere you are.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be like in an internship to make a good impression, like anyone. If you're coaching, if you're your neighbor, like it's just who you are will get you where you go.
Absolutely.
So how do you think being a student athlete, I know you said a little bit something about it, but how do you think being a student athlete helped you, you know, whether it be from translatable skills you had or connections you made because you were a student athlete, or can you talk a little bit about if that helped you and how?
Yeah, for me personally, with my job, it's very stressful and time oriented. So I need to manage my time and make sure I'm done with one patient and going on to the other with all my notes done. So I really learned from, you guys kind of might brush it off and not think it's anything, especially as juniors. You're just going through the motion in the sense that you know you have an exam, you got to study, you have class, you have practice, you're doing all this, and it just seems like normal to you. But you're going to find when you go out, you're going to continue that work ethic. You're going to continue to just kill things, really. You're going to go from here to maybe a first job, maybe an internship, maybe grad school, but you're going to continue that work ethic you gained here as a student athlete. Athletes want to win, but a student athlete more so brings that time management, that responsibility. And you just bring it all together, especially by your senior year. You have the idea of what you need to do to be successful here. You know, freshman year you might have struggled a little bit, but you work it out by the end and you'll carry that with you. So my biggest thing was my time management skills that really helped me out.
Yeah, I would say that I think being I think we all know as student athletes, it really requires like 110% every single day. There's like, you really can't have days where you're just not mentally there, and I think that kind of becomes like just second nature, and I think that really translates into the jobs that you do too. And I think that that's really important, like bringing everything to the table that you have, no matter what job you're doing. If you hate it, if you love it, if it's kind of like a volunteer position, whatever it is, I think that's a really critical skill, is to really be 110% invested in what you're doing in the present moment is really important.
And who were the key people that you kind of used to get into grad school? Because I'm sure it's a competitive program. Both of you got into really competitive programs.
Yeah.
So, like if they were thinking as juniors of going to grad school, who should they kind of have on their corner, getting in on their corner right now?
So the best thing that I did for myself, and that you guys should be thinking about at this point, is like my junior year, I approached one of the faculty members in the nutrition department, and I wasn't totally like interested in the research she was doing, but I asked her, she was like one of my favorite professors, and I just asked her if I could get involved in like the research that she was doing, and it turned into like a job that I worked over the summer, like part-time, and it continued through the semester, and then that kind of led to the next research position that I got as an undergrad, and those are the people who wrote all of my letters of recommendation when it came time to apply to grad school, and those are people that you really have to have good connections with. When it comes time, you need to have people who can write you, who know you and can write about your work and really back you up on those applications, because I think that's really critical.
Yeah, and I actually use Pete. Use Pete as one of my recommendations. So really,
my coach was also one of my recommenders.
Use the people that are around you. And one of the biggest things that helped me out, I don't know, is Dr. Rousier still around? Okay, so I was thinking med school as well. So I actually talked to Dr. Rousier. I followed him. He connected me with other doctors where I shadowed, and I found out, this is not what I want to do. Then from there, he connected me to, I thought, maybe physician's assistant. So I was really hitting every healthcare. But so I tried that out. Again, I shadowed, I watched, I found out I didn't like it. So Dr. Rousier, in a sense, helped me figure out what I didn't want to do in order to help me find out what I actually love and wanted to do. So that was really helpful.
And that's okay too. I think I actually ran into a football player over at the stadium today who graduated last spring, and he worked at a job for 3 months. And I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I quit. I couldn't stand that job." And it's a job he thought he wanted to do. It was in, he called it logistics, so some kind of business-related job. He said, I can't do a 9-to-5 job. I didn't like it. And it's okay to do those things after you graduate. It's not a failure. It's kind of like an experiment to see what you like and don't like. So some of you might have those experiences, and just like you did, it wasn't quite a job, but it was, you know, getting your feet wet and realizing what you like and what you don't.
Yeah, because I actually went on to, I shadowed, I don't know if I'd say do it this much, but I shadowed 2 different therapists for over like 70 hours over a semester just to find out, because I was going to invest a lot of money to go to grad school. I wanted to make sure it's what I wanted to do. So I would say really get your feet wet and not just, you know, an hour, like really figure out what they do and if that's what you want to do. It does absolutely help.
Yeah.
And then Alex, if you could talk about, was there anything, skills you learned as a student athlete are helping you today?
Yeah, to reiterate what they said, time management was huge. And not even just in the sense of, oh, I have a test now, I have a test then. For me, I'm not a great test taker, so I have to really prep. I have to do everything a little longer than anybody else. So I would get up early, I'd go start working, then I'd go to class, and then I'd go to practice, and then I'd go to class again, or depending upon the day, and then I'd go study more, or go get food in between, whatever. And it just, the days I work now, like the 9-10 hour day, like, yeah, that's hard, but it wasn't the same as having all the same stress and having like the wicked, incredibly long days that I had then. And also one other thing I took away from it too, I don't know if any of you guys have met Coach Canella, but he is a very, very intense man. And whenever I'm like kind of dreading having a conversation with somebody, I just think to myself, you know, thank God it's not Coach Canella.
Maybe you could insert your own coaches.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great point.
So funny.
And then just to kind of wrap up the formal questions, what kind of general advice would you have? Any advice maybe you didn't talk about already? For anything.
I really, if you don't mind, I really like what you said. Try things, get your feet wet.
Yeah.
I wish, I like where I landed, but I would have liked it so much more if I tried doing this when I was younger. I could have probably entered at a higher level. I entered the solar industry at basically the lowest you can get, which is installer, which is nothing to say, or nothing wrong with that. I'm really happy I did it, because a lot of the folks who I've met now don't have this experience. And they're like, oh, well, I know all about this product. I'm like, well, did you know this? And they're like, no. It's a broader view, but still, I wish I'd seen this when I was younger. I wish I just had that extra couple hours, that extra 70 hours, that extra week, month, whatever it was, of time in doing anything that can apply to any situation. So try things.
Yeah, I think like now is the time to really like move around laterally and like before you have to really hone in on what you want to do. So it's a really good opportunity, and it's a really good time to try out like working for different professors, or if that's what you're into, or like shadowing, things like that, and really take the opportunity, because you don't have to be like making a salary right now. You can try things out like in your spare time, and you have the freedom to do that, and you should really take advantage of it.
So a lot of people when they hear advice like that are thinking, well, I don't have time for my sport. Like, how did you carve out time to do those things?
It was possible. I mean, I continued to run last year when I was a second-year master's student. So I was working 20 hours a week and also competing and taking full course load. So it's possible. I think it just takes, you have to really sit down and look at your priorities, and if you really love what you're doing, then it's worth it, I think. And to me it was like a really difficult time, but I think it was totally worth it. And now, like, it sounds weird, but as a PhD student, not competing anymore, like on the track team, I feel like I have so much time, which is crazy because I'm comparing it to my time as a master's student, but it really, yeah.
Yeah, I think just another advice I'd see is be proactive. Like, you guys drive yourself. Like, and you'll realize it when you get out. Like, right now you're in such a structured environment, and that will go away, and then it's you. Like, you need to figure out it's not necessarily like go get a job, that's not what I'm saying, but like you need to figure out the next step for yourself, because you got to always have the next thing, because if you don't, then you're going to be complacent. And just like as athletes, you always want to be better and better. If you don't have that next thing in your mind, you're just going to be that complacent person, and none of you are. Like, that's why you're here right now. So you're going to always want to better yourself, so just always create those next goals.
be thinking about what's next,
Right.
you know. Always be thinking about the next steps. It's never too early to start thinking about that.
Agreed.
So what questions did you have something else?
No, I just said agreed.
Oh, you agreed. We all agreed. Okay. So what questions do you guys have either for the panelists in general or anyone specific? Come on, I gave you a half hour. Yes.
So I'm pre-dent now, and that's kind of like, I've shadowed him, and that's kind of a goal, but how important do you think it is to get a professor recommendation letter rather than like a dentist or like a coach? Because I feel like trying to meet, like, with all those pre-recs and stuff, you have to take like, there's 400 kids in Orgo, like I'm not gonna go and meet my professor, there's no point unless I'm failing, well, you know, sometimes you fail, but like, unless I'm actually failing, then I go, but to me, I don't really wanna ask my professor to write a recommendation when I was failing a class, you know, and like that's an odd, like I'd rather be doing well, but I haven't yet taken small enough classes yet because by the junior year you just finish all your requirements for it, because you're typically will apply, like I'm taking them in May.
So you're talking about recommendations for dental school?
Yeah, like a professor, like what, do you think that's gonna be detrimental in that health field, or do you think?
I think it depends on, you have to look at the school. Some of them say you need a professor.
Right.
Yeah.
If not, I would say go to someone that builds your character really
Okay.
well. But it's tricky because even I was a couple of years out of school, so none of my professors would remember me.
Yeah,
So I
so
didn't really go
did you
that
go-
route.
you didn't go
I didn't
back
go
to
that
it?
route.
Okay.
No.
But you did, so you didn't have
So
a
I didn't use a
professor.
professor to give me a
Oh, okay.
recommendation, and I still
Yeah,
did
'cause
okay.
I was talking to the advisor, and she's like, you need 3
Yeah.
professors, and I was like, I couldn't even tell you 3 professors
Oh,
I've
wow.
met. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
it's not-
Which is like what I was kind of talking about, like even just approaching them and saying,
Yeah.
like, can I just like shadow you in your lab and see
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
do? And even if you're not interested in it, you don't
Just
have to be
do it.
at
Right,
all.
just ignore
But to
them.
kind of, because like now as a like someone who teaches,
Yeah.
like when I have people in the like when I teach to a classroom, and as a student, I never realized these things. It's weird when you're like on the other side of the table, but like when people are engaged and like and interested in what you're doing, like people, like professors love that. So if you ask questions and just kind of approach them and say like, I'm really interested. Just look up on their website
What they're doing.
and just be like,
that route. Okay.
I'm interested in zebrafish and I want to see what
And I would
things like
also
that.
say,
Just,
you don't want the first interaction you have with them is asking for recommendation.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
gotta build
You want to
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
have
there
to
needs
start
to be.
now
I
is the
didn't know how
time to
important it would
start.
be
Yeah.
in the long run, because that's what I was curious if you,
Yeah.
because you said you went
For me
3 years
personally,
later,
yeah. For me
so-
personally, it didn't matter, but the best thing is really having someone that knows you
Yeah.
and can really like put their
Right.
foot in the line for you.
But you never know where you're going to apply.
Right.
So if you get stuck where it says you have to have at least one professor and you
Yeah.
don't have
It's nice
anyone in your
to-
back pocket,
Yeah.
it's good to maybe just have that person on the ready.
Yeah.
You know, and like they said, like it's about networking, and it doesn't mean you have to be like in love with what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
You just have to be genuine about it.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. But I didn't know if you
Zebrafish.
thought it was going to be like crucial in that medicine field.
Other questions? Any more questions about what their jobs are and like what they do? Did you get a clear picture of what they do? I'm sorry. No, please
Don't
do.
be sorry,
Yeah,
ask
no, keep
away.
us
This is great.
You're all from Mass?
I don't know. I'm actually from outside of Albany, New York.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you from Mass?
I'm from Sharon, Mass.
I'm from Framingham.
Okay. Are you all working in Mass then?
I'm physically here like every day. So
And I live in Northampton, and I work in Leeds, Massachusetts.
And my job brings me outside the state periodically, but yes, I'm based out of Hopkinton.
Was geographical area important to you guys when you were looking for grad school or job? Was it pretty important?
So I really wanted to be in Boston. I think that's kind of like the thing to do when you graduate is to go to a city and like be with all your friends, and it's really fun, or so I've heard. But I honestly, if you're
Cool.
at all interested in going to grad school, UMass has one of the best like funding programs. Like the funding that they provide to grad students is like top notch. It's like one of the best in the country. Like if you work 10 hours a week, they pay your tuition in full. So you go to grad school for free, and then you get $10,000 a semester as a stipend. So like that to me was like, it's so far outweighed going into debt and like having to take out a huge loan to go to school at like BU or Harvard or somewhere like
Did
that.
you find, so those are called assistantships
Right.
or fellowships. Did you
Right.
not find those opportunities at other grad schools? I thought that it was common. Is it not that common?
There are some, and it definitely depends on the field that you're in, but UMass across the board, across like all majors, is really good about it. So if, like, for me, the motivation to stay here also was like, if you have an extra year of eligibility, to use it and apply it to your grad school while you're here. And if you're working, it's like the dream situation, pretty much. So.
And I can second that, because I was a grad assistant at Springfield College where I went for my grad studies, and I don't know if you have like a full ride with yours, but they only covered a certain amount of credit, so it wasn't like just paying for my entire
UMass
ride
is
there.
unlimited.
UMass, I think,
Yeah, it's really, really awesome.
That's because they're unionized.
Exactly.
Right.
And they have to pay you, like, if you work, they have to pay you $25 an hour.
Is that how much it is? Can you believe it?
Yeah. So seriously consider it. If you have any, like, I graduated a semester early with my bachelor's and went straight into the master's program because it made so much sense.
And well, real quick
Yeah, go
to
ahead.
add on that too, geographic importance wasn't that crucial to me, but it was really convenient that right when I graduated, I didn't have any money, so I was able to kind of live at home and commute to work really close, and that's the reason I haven't gone further. Is just my job. I have like a 5-minute commute right now. I listen to my friends say that, oh yeah, the reverse commute's not bad. It's only like an hour and 20 each way. I'm like, ooh, about that. But with that said, I mean, if you guys can work locally, do it. But if you can go wherever, don't let yourself be restricted.
How important was salary to you when you were looking at, a field of study and when you were getting close to narrowing down what profession you wanted to do? How important was, like, did you research what the typical salaries are, and was it important to you?
My biggest thing was I wanted to make sure I was going to be able to get a job. So I found like physical therapy. I'm going to plug it again, but there's so many different things you can do. You can work with kids, with pediatrics. You can do sports. You can do ortho. You can do acute care. There's so many just different venues that you can get into. So I'm like a general physical therapist, but there's all these outlets. If I got bored with what I'm doing now, I can switch into something else. So I like that aspect, but it also, I knew there were going to be jobs out there, and I knew that I was going to be paid pretty well. So it was kind of like a full circle of me picking where I was ending up.
So that's really the ideal situation.
It was
It's something you really wanted
right.
to do,
It
and
just worked.
job security and
Right.
a good salary. So,
Yeah. And it was really, I had maybe 3 or 4 different options around here to get a job. So it was right what I thought when I would get out of school, that I felt like I would have options. I had them. So it was nice.
That's great. How about you? Did you?
I
Was
would
that
say
a factor at all for you?
it definitely was. I think that like coming out of a like nutrition program, I got my BS, so I was like hard sciences. I took all of the chem, like all the way through. But I really found that like my options in terms of jobs when I graduated were going to be like working in a lab in Boston, making like 30 grand, like barely getting by, and just like, I don't know, and doing like kind of remedial work in a lab. And to me that like wasn't attractive, and I knew that if I wanted to do anything that was like self-directed, that I would need a graduate degree. So I think like the sciences often do require some type of graduate degree. So it's really something to consider, and you can put it off and do other things in the meantime, but I think that that to me, I knew I wasn't going to have a lot of upward mobility if I didn't go to grad school.
And you want to be a professor?
Yes, I would
I
like
don't
to
think you
teach.
mentioned that.
Yeah, so I would like to eventually like stay in the academic arena and continue research, but also teach. It's kind of like the ultimate package, I think. So, yeah.
Which is what you should shoot for, right? Do you recommend that for everybody?
Yeah.
And I was similarly concerned with just finding a job at all, let alone salary. So I mean, salary's become more important as I've gone through, and I realized what the cap is and what I can do. And there is definitely money to be made in my industry, but I mean, for me, I've been looking, and as I told you guys before, I'm interested in civil engineering. That's not even financial. That's just more of, I like kind of just the idea of structures and numbers more than I like the idea of dealing with people. So.
Any last questions? Yeah.
Well, you said before physical therapy you're interested in either like medical or PA. So I know for a lot of PA schools, they require like a lot of direct patient care
Yeah.
hours, like to even apply.
Yeah, it's about like
So-
1,000. So you're basically working some kind of like
Yeah.
CNA job for a year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had like any advice on that, or like.
Are you thinking
options
PA?
for that? Yeah, kind of.
Oh, I can hook you up with a couple different people if
Okay.
you want, and you can talk with them, and they can give you way better advice.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
does shadowing
absolutely.
count as
So
those hours?
it
she's
depends
thinking
on the
about?
school.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can absolutely hook you up with someone. Are you looking in state, or are you looking?
I don't know.
Or just general?
Yeah.
Okay.
General.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'd welcome you to, spend a few minutes talking to them individually. Maybe asking them some more questions, or at the very least, just come introduce yourself. Again, we're all about networking here, so you don't need to like them or like the job they have. Just come introduce yourself. And just another connection that you can make in your circle and your network. So, but I do want to, before we break up, thank you guys very much. Thank you guys for your time. We do appreciate your time. I know you've all had a long day of work prior to tonight, so we do appreciate your time. So, all right. So, feel free.
Actually, one of the older UMass girls soccer players is a physician's assistant now, so I can hook you up with her. Do you have an email, or? I don't know if you want